Hey everyone, and welcome to Tony for Horrors Beyond Mortal Comprehension. Tony for you. There are very few names in the space of literature as well known as H.P. Lovecraft. When it comes to horror and psychologically mind-bending descriptions, he reigns as king. Whether it's creating sweeping vistas in the mind or bone-chilling descriptions of beasts beyond mortal comprehension, there are countless examples in his work. So, with that being the case, a game like Shin Megami Tensei based on demons and monsters in fiction and mythology, it's no surprise that some of the Lovecraftian canon snuck its way in. Today, we're going to be covering Cthulhu, the most recognizable of Lovecraft's cosmic beings that appear in Shin Megami Tensei. Some of Lovecraft's beings play a small role in the narrative of the games, while others can be blamed for causing entire worlds to end within the canon. Without any further ado, let's talk about Lovecraft's best, Cthulhu, the Star Child. When H.P. Lovecraft's name is said, the first thing you probably think of is Cthulhu, and that's for good reason. Imagining a beast that would strike your mind with such horror it would melt your brain just at the mere sight of it. Well, that's Cthulhu. The history and lore behind this being are explained in a series of texts penned by Lovecraft, as well as the torch being carried by future writers inspired by his work. In fact, a lot of Lovecraft's canon is very much up for interpretation, and has many diverging paths depending on the work you read. For the sake of this video, I will mainly be sticking to those written by the main author himself. In the book titled The Call of Cthulhu, which Lovecraft actually pronounced Cthulhu, but later became more popular as its phonetic pronunciation, consisted of 3 chapters. The first of which, titled The Horror in Clay, starts with an ominous quote. Of such great powers or beings there may be conceivably a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested, perhaps in shapes, in forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity, forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts and kinds. The narrator explains in the early parts of the work that it is a blessing that the human mind cannot fully comprehend all the world has to offer, rather than a curse. We humans are not meant to journey very far, and that the technical progress we put together is insignificant. There will come a time, however, that we will piece together disconnected discoveries and learn the truths best left buried. The man we are hearing the story from has indeed pieced together a strange revelation that would make a lesser mind mad, all starting in the winter of 1926. Following the death of his great-uncle, a professor of Semitic languages, only misfortune befell all who came across his work. There was no cause of death, rather a vague guess from a doctor, but he left behind some important artifacts. One such artifact was a locked box that held within a small bas-relief of a monster, here explained to be a mix of an octopus, dragon, and human. Accompanying the relief was a set of papers entitled Cthulhu Cult. These papers explain that the sculptor of this piece was a man who was psychically attuned and created this work in a hypnagogic state, dreaming of strange cities dripping with green ooze and flying monoliths. The bas-relief held strange hieroglyphs, which the manuscript translate to Cthulhu Fhtagn. The manuscript goes on to say the sculptor soon became stricken with an illness and constantly repeated strange phrases and spoke of a being lumbering about miles high. Soon after his bout of sickness, he snapped back to normal, as if the hold on him was suddenly loosened, and he returned home with no recollection of what had happened. Eventually, a madness permeated all whom the professor questioned for their visions of the unknowable, which crescendoed to a nocturnal suicide of a man in London. But before his death, this man penned of an oncoming cataclysm. The second chapter, titled The Tale of Inspector Legras, gives us more insight into the Cthulhu cults themselves. A statuette was discovered in the wooded swamps of New Orleans, which had rites connected to it so dark and twisted the police recognized them as a cult of completely unknown origin. Every member of the cult they managed to question was of no help at all in understanding the actual beliefs, and they were at a loss. The statue itself could not be identified with any school of sculpture, age in history, or area of origin, but all members who inspected it knew of its advanced age. Once again, the writer describes the same humanoid octopus beast, and despite not being close to anything seen in our world, none could deny it was quite lifelike. But just when all hope was thought lost, the police had gotten one of the cultists to provide the words to a ritual, which are as follows: Finglui, Mignaf, Cthulhu, Rillier, Ga Noggle, Fatagan. These words translate to, in his house at Rillier, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. Soon after this revelation, more was revealed of the cult. They sacrificed their fellow men to their dark gods, held ritualistic orgies, and even terrorized the locals with strange screaming, drumming, and nightly assaults. Upon further investigation, we come to understand these cultists worship the Great Old Ones, which once existed, but now are gone. They had descended onto this earth since before humans, and their dead bodies had been hidden under the sea and the ground for untold millennia. Their dreams seeped into the minds of the first humans to exist, which created a secret cult that had never died. This cult has existed and will continue to exist around the globe until the day the dreamer Cthulhu bids for their liberation and returns to the world. The narrator now pieces together a possible cause of death for his great uncle: assassination by a member of the cult. The third chapter, titled The Madness from the Sea, dives into the revelations better left hidden. The narrator tracks down the journal of a man who survived an ordeal at sea. Gustav Johansen was the sole survivor of a pirate attack and managed to retrieve the manuscript of the second mate. The tale spoke of how they were actually victorious in their battle, but the captain and first mate had been slain by the savage pirates. The ship had suffered damage, which forced the crew to commandeer the enemy ship for survival. On this vessel, they found an odd figurine depicting the same being in the manuscripts of our narrator's great uncle. The boat then had to dock on an island not known to exist within these parts of the ocean, which led to the deaths of 6 other men. It was at this point that the narrator began to piece together the clues: the insanity gripping the sculptor of the relief, the strange visions people suffered across the continent, and the discovery of the statue on the pirate vessel at sea. They all lined up. The sailors explored this new island, which was dubbed Rillier. The men were dumbfounded at the strange architecture, which left them in a state of delirium and confusion. Nothing like this could be possible on Earth. In time, they managed to make their way to a large doorway, which had a geometry unknown to be possible. Without warning, it began to open, and a beast emerged from the depths. The green spawn of the stars had awoken. Cthulhu. 2 men died on the spot from fright. 3 men were swept up with the great claws of the beast. 1 man ran away and seemingly got sucked into a piece of stone not seen by anyone mere moments ago. Only 2 men managed to make their way to the boat which brought them here, and only 1 managed to survive the journey home: Gustav Johansen. Cthulhu had chased them to the boat and eventually sank under the waters. Then it became obvious the sailors that day had irrevocably changed the course of human history. Gustav wrote of these events and explained how death would be a blessing, if only he believed it would truly relieve him of the fear and madness that will follow him for the rest of his days, and perhaps even eternity. But Gustav Johansen had died shortly after he returned to his home in Norway, assumed to be assassinated for knowing too much. What the cult had hoped to do for an uncountable number of years, a small group of sailors had done by accident. The awakening of the primordial star child, the Great Old One, bringer of madness, Cthulhu. Our narrator is left alone, having collected all that pertained to the strange box which his great uncle had left him to inherit. Now a mess of anxiety and fear, he learns the island the sailors spoke of had sunken back into the depths, and with it Cthulhu. The beast must have been held captive by the pressure of the sea, released once the tide had lowered, and having sunk back under the waves once again, descended into slumber. This must be true, for if Cthulhu had truly awoken, the earth would be screaming in terror and destruction. Then again, perhaps not. The will of the Star Child was not able to be discerned by a short paper and a few statuettes. Either way, the narrator bookends the tale by hoping to finish his own manuscript, collecting all that he has learned so that, if nothing else, the people that come after him will know not to dig any deeper into the affairs of the Great Old Ones than he has already. It has destroyed the lives of countless people, and soon it will destroy his too. Quite an interesting tale, and one that held up over the many years. I had to remove a lot of detail for the summary, but the core of the work is quintessential Lovecraft. An ageless, unknowable, primordial entity born from the very cosmos itself infected the dreams of those on Earth living blissfully unaware of the horror that truly exists in the universe. A cult with practices depraved and disgusting, heeding the words of that which cannot be described. And of course, the innocent and curious scholars that dig too deep into the veil of what humans can comprehend, resulting in madness and death. Anyway, in Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, he's this little guy right here. There's simultaneously a lot and not that much to say about this thing. Not exactly the human-dragon-octopus hybrid described in the many works of Lovecraft, but rather just an octopus with a very prominent human, phallus. One could argue that the scales lining the tentacles and head of this demon are somewhat dragon-like, but Lovecraft was very specific about this beast having wings. Then again, he was also specific about it having a body and legs too, but that's okay. In DX2, the mobile gacha Shin Megami Tensei game, we get a brief description of the demon, the original ruler of Earth who arrived on this planet several hundred million years ago, according to H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. This gargantuan monster stands several hundred meters in height, has a scaly, rubbery-looking body, possesses an octopus-like head, a face covered in feelers, wings like a bat, as well as hands and feet with massive claws. It is even said that Cthulhu's voice resonates like an unholy oboe and is so disturbing that humans who hear it ultimately lose their minds. It slumbers beneath the Pacific Ocean within the sunken city of R'lyeh as it awaits its revival. They seem to know their stuff when it comes to the lore of the demon, but Kazuma Kaneko certainly took artistic liberties when designing our favorite great old one. Good design or not, his inclusion in the game is nice. Well, that covers the great Cthulhu and his horrible cult. Let me know what you thought of the story and the cosmic entity in the comments down below, and while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I feel like I was in a dreamlike state writing this video. Maybe I should be concerned. Special thanks to Andre Vinicius de Silva Valens, Anton, Arctic Mirror, Kalos, Goose Kebab, Jeter Michelle, Just a Middleman, Matt M, Not Catchy, Patty123, Stuart Ash, The Digital Dutchman, VideoGamer75, Zeba Neba, and many more for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching this Lovecraftian monster breakdown, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.